This is Rich Franklin, and you're listening to Stand and Bang.
Hey, this is Jim Miller, and you're listening to Stand and Bang.
Hey, this is Dan Miller, and you're listening to Stand and Bang.
Hey guys, this is Hurricane Heather Jo Clark, and you're listening to Stand and Bang Radio.
Hey, this is Max Levis Holloway, and you're listening to Stand and Bang Radio.
Hi, I'm Andrea KGB Lee, and you're listening to Stand and Bang Radio.
Hey everybody, Bob Swinton here. You are listening to Stand and Bang. Boom!
Hey, fight fans, welcome back to another edition of Stand and Bang Radio. I'm your host, Aaron Robbins. Joining me tonight as co-host is Mark Modeski. Mark?
Hey, how y'all doing tonight?
And from Gem City Fighting, Fred Kirby.
Hey, what's happening, fellas?
And we are super excited tonight. We have a very special guest. Joining us actually from Ohio tonight, not Singapore, is Rich Ace Franklin. Rich, thank you so much.
You guys, thanks for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here, man.
No, absolutely no problem. Now, normally what we do is 3 news topics, and then we segue into the interview section of the show. But because we do have somebody who is so busy and has so much going on, we're going to talk about one topic that segues directly into what Rich is doing now. Okay, I'm sure that all fight fans right now are well aware of the world tour that's going on with the UFC, Jose Aldo and Conor McGregor pumping up their championship fight. It looks to me like Jose Aldo's getting a little bit tired of going from town to town and dealing with McGregor's antics. Now, on the other hand, it is very smart to reach out to other markets, and I think that's what they're doing. They're trying to, drive up the sales and get a global market for this fight, which is going to be very interesting. Now, Rich, that leads me to my first question for you. Being over there with ONE Championships and being the VP, you guys are kind of like an island. I do know that you have a very large island, 75 countries and 1 billion people, but you really don't see a huge presence from ONE Championships outside of those borders. Is that something that you guys are interested in doing? Is that something that we'll see from the company at some point?
Yeah, the company we're always interested in expanding ourselves globally. ONE Championship is based in Singapore, and so far we've held shows. I mean, just in the time that I've been with the company last year, and I'm sure I'm going to leave some of these out, but I mean, we hold shows in Indonesia, Malaysia, Taiwan. We opened up in Beijing just late last year. All over Southeast Asia, basically. But even last year, we did our first show in Dubai. So we started basically kind of expanding to the Middle East. At some point in time, I'm sure we may end up kind of trickling into Europe and all that. But our company, we're more of a media rights company. So with ONE Championship, it's more about the broadcast than anything else. So yeah, I'm assuming that at some point in time we would look to be having broadcasts even over here in this part of the world in the States.
Okay, fantastic. Now, I wanted to get Fred and Mark's opinion on the whole world tour before we move on and just kind of focus right in on ONE Championships. What do you think, guys? Good idea to pump this fight so much, or are you getting a little bit tired of it?
Me personally, I actually enjoy it, man. I think it's a great opportunity to actually promote this fight. I think it's going to be a huge fight for the UFC this year. And seeing as how they're both like international guys, Conor being from Ireland and Jose being from Brazil, they're going to Ireland, they're going to Brazil, they're going to Canada. I think they hit all the major markets. I think, me personally, I'm the type of guy that gets into this stuff too. So I, for one, love it. All
right, Mark, we'll give you the last word before we move on.
Yeah, me personally, I think it's really good to build visibility for the sport. Again, I think in terms of highlighting somebody like Conor McGregor, who's European, building, some presence up there and getting Europeans excited about a potential champ coming their way, I think it's great. Me personally, as an MMA fight fan, it doesn't really do much for me. Again, I'm not really much into that. But yeah, I mean, it's great for the sport overall.
All right, so definitely a good way to get some good ticket sales and to put a lot of focus on this fight, which I do agree with Fred. I do think that this is going to be a very large fight. Now, we've got a unique opportunity with Rich here to kind of get the American fight fans who listen to our show a much better picture of what's going on with ONE Championships. I watch ONE Championships. I know some of the hardcore fans do. Maybe some of the other listeners of our show don't watch it so much. So we're going to try to drum up some interest and give them the background and what's going on now and everything like that. So my first question for you, Rich, is, okay, you're very well known. You're the former UFC Middleweight champion, All-American boy from Cincinnati, Ohio. And then all of a sudden, it seems like, not maybe overnight, but very quickly, you find yourself over in Singapore and vice president of ONE Championships. Can you kind of go through that for the fans and tell us the story behind that? How did you end up over there?
Well, I believe part of it was my reputation. My initial trip down to Singapore was to do a seminar for an MMA school called Evolve MMA down in Singapore. The gym brought me down to do a seminar. I did a seminar with my coach at the time, Matt Hume, who I'd been working with towards the second half of my career. And I left there, and I just formed a good relationship with the people that basically owned that gym. Well, that relationship led to some business introductions, and I met some of the people just in the MMA scene in that part of the world. At the time, I'm training for, I ended up conducting part of two of my camps at Evolve MMA down there. Through those subsequent trips, I started just, again, meeting more people and making more business connections. And there was some talk at one point in time about a possible job opportunity. And, with the UFC, I had been with UFC for years. They told me that they would, that I had a position with them and when I was going to retire from fighting. But when I sat down and talked to the powers that be with Lorenzo and Dana, and basically said, hey guys, I have a job opportunity here with ONE Championship, and I'm getting towards the end of my career. I'd like to sit and talk with you guys. And I explained the opportunity that I had with them, and they said, hey, listen, this is a really good opportunity, so you should pursue it. And so I took this job with ONE Championship, and it's really been a blessing. I'm excited. It's a great team of people that I work with. Hard workers, very focused, and they have one goal in mind, and that is to basically make mixed martial arts grow in Asia, because over there the scene of MMA is much like it was in the States here 10 to 15 years ago. We're breaking those barriers of educating the fans and all that kind of stuff. So it's the role that I play with ONE Championship is not too different in a sense on that aspect of things than the role I played here in the States 10 years ago when I was doing tons of media during my fight career.
No, that's absolutely right. Even the younger fans, or what we call the new age fans, or the Johnny-come-latelys, they do know you. They know you from Tough. They know you from being the middleweight champion of the world. So it's very interesting that you've been able to play that role in two different countries. Now, being that you must have a lot of demand to be over in foreign countries and foreign gyms. We know that you travel a lot. And Mark, that brings up an interesting subject that you wanted to ask Mr. Franklin.
We've heard a lot. There's been a lot about your involvement with Armor Gel. Is that sort of dovetail or a part and parcel of you training over in other seas? Like, this stuff sounds like it's really, really interesting. Can you kind of explain that out to us a little bit more?
I can. Well, let me just say that my introduction to the company that makes Armor Gel is ABL. It's American Biotech Labs. They're out of Utah. And for I had opened up a cafe in California, and I was attending a health show in Anaheim one year, and they had a booth there, and I stopped to talk to these guys because the product had caught my attention. So the introduction to this particular product had really nothing to do with fighting at the time, but the reason why it had intrigued me is because I had recently taken a job with ONE Championship. Part of what I do with ONE Championship is when we go into markets, like we have our show in Manila in the Philippines coming up here before the end of the month on April 24th. And when I go to the Philippines, like I just returned from a trip in Manila, and I conducted a press conference for the fight. Well, when I'm there, I conducted a seminar, and I'm bouncing from country to country, and I'm grappling on mats in all these different countries with a bunch of different guys, and you're mixing a lot of bacterias. And the reason why Armor Gel, when I met these gentlemen at this health convention, the reason why it grabbed my attention is because Armor Gel is basically a topical ointment that you put on. There are no drugs. It's completely non-toxic. You can eat this stuff if you want to. I've actually done it for an upset stomach before, believe it or not. But it's been clinically tested to be very, very effective against things like staph, ringworm, various yeasts and fungus and all these kinds of things. So oftentimes when I'm in a foreign country, sometimes before I grapple, I might put this stuff on my body, but I actually had a staph infection one time on my leg, and I used this stuff on the staph infection on my leg, and it cleared the staph up right away. So basically, in talking to the gentleman from this company, you learn a lot about the product and how silver just in general is effective against various kinds of bacteria and all this kind of stuff. And I literally, with this armor gel, I don't travel without it. I keep it with me when I'm on an airplane, for example. I'll rub it on my face. I rub it like on the inside of my nose. It acts as a barrier basically against bacteria, like when I'm breathing, because in the fuselage of the plane, you're basically just breathing in and out a cesspool of bacteria all day long. But it's really good for like healing cuts. I've used it on cuts before to help me heal faster so that I can get scarring sooner. And I've used it on things like sunburns. I had a really bad sunburn one time, and used it on that. So it's just, silver is historically, been used for, like, like the tradition of throwing your coins in a fountain. That came from, people, they used to put silver coins in a well to keep the water from going rancid. So it has a lot of, antibacterial properties. And so, this gel has just been really beneficial for me and a lifesaver for me with all the international travel that I do.
All right, now Fred, I know that you're very curious about armor gel. Actually, you had a question for Rich about it.
Yeah, armor gel is insane, man. It kind of sounds like a cure-all. You say it can help with like, cuts, abrasions, minor burns, and things like that. I actually have 2 young daughters. I have an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old. I'm kind of curious. Is it okay for kids or is it not okay for kids? What's the deal with like children? Would it be able to be used for minor cuts and abrasions for a child?
Oh, absolutely. Actually, I had my niece was over at my house yesterday, and I have a little bit of property here in Cincinnati, and so the kids, they popped out in the backyard. They're walking around the creek and all that stuff, and it's cold here still. Their feet get wet, and they end up taking their shoes off. They're walking around the woods. And my niece, she's like 4 years old, and she comes up and she has a little scratch on her foot, and so I have to put something on the scratch for her because you know how kids are. If you put something on that, it'll make them feel better. So I put a little bit of the armor gel that I had on the scratch on her foot, but it's like I said, it's completely non-toxic. It's a 24 ppm silver based gel, and literally you can eat this stuff, and then like I said, I've had like upset stomach before, maybe from like eating some bad food or something like that, and I actually put some of the tube in my mouth just to help with that bacteria. So yeah, there's literally no medication, like nothing pharmaceutical inside this gel at all, but it will decrease your healing time. We have in the company literature. I may have some of this on the info page of my website. I'm not sure if I have a PDF link to this yet. But we actually have some pictures of like cuts and like when somebody's freshly cut and maybe like a week later, and you can see like how quickly this stuff will help you heal because it's very rejuvenating for the skin.
Yo, that is amazing, man. And that actually segues me right into my next question, which would be, how do we acquire this stuff? Where can we get some? And do you know exactly how much it is? I'm actually very interested in this. It sounds amazing.
Oh man, what do we have that price? It's on. You can get it through my website. You can go to richfranklin.com, and there's an info tab there for the armor gel, and you click on the tab, and it'll give you like there's just some basic information on it there. But you can get it through the website. We're in the process of setting up wholesale accounts here in the States and just internationally. The company ABL, this company, they're all about doing good for people. The motivation for doing this product was that they can really, like their idea in working with me, they're like this, for them working with me, they view this as an opportunity to bring this product to people that they want to do good for. So they've done a lot of work with like military, different militaries outside of the country and stuff like that where they sell this product. But, I believe the 4-ounce tube, oh man, I should know this, but I believe the 4-ounce tube is $29.99. And it's, that's a tube that could, if you're using it like on top of a staph infection that you have, or if you're using it for some ringworm or a cut or something like that, the tube will basically, at 4 ounces, last you pretty much forever.
That is awesome, man.
Okay,
awesome.
Now that actually brings this kind of like back to the MMA world. Now, Rich, obviously, very well-known fighter. You still train, you still spar, you still get on the mat. Now, we've seen this quote-unquote injury bug floating through MMA, and sometimes it is a staph infection. Sometimes it is some sort of bacteria or virus getting to these people. Give the fight fans an idea how detrimental being sick during training is and how beneficial something like this could be if incorporated into a training program.
Oh, this stuff that can be extremely beneficial. if you look at the incidence of things like MRSA and how much the incidences of MRSA and stuff like that have increased, I have more and more articles that are coming my way that I'll be posting like PDF links to on my website about MRSA and stuff like that. It's astronomical how many cases of MRSA there are, say like today compared to what there were like 20 or 30 years ago, or at least reported cases. And oftentimes when you detect MRSA on your body, you don't know that it's a problem until it's a major problem. So it really can just completely take you out of a fight because it takes time to recover from that stuff. The Armor Gel, you could use this on your body as a preventative care. Like there are times when if I'm in an MMA school somewhere internationally and it kind of looks a little suspect, like, oh, I'm not really sure these people have ever cleaned the mats, then I might use my gel. I might use my gel all over my body before I even get on the grappling mat. However, to use it for something like that as a preventative care, like to be able to do that every day that you get on the mat, especially if you're grappling twice a day, it could become quite pricey. So this is more of a solution-oriented thing. Like if I have a piece of ringworm, I've used it on ringworm before, and it's actually cleared my ringworm up faster than any kind of like antifungal medication that I've used before. So it can be quite effective. And I mean, obviously some silver gel isn't going to help you against other injuries, like if you break your hand and stuff like that, but this can prevent, a lot of sickness and those kinds of things are caused by bacteria on the foods and stuff like that. And so, even using this gel, like in the case of like if I'm eating it or something like that, it can help eliminate those kinds of things. And I mean, I've had those problems myself before. Before I fought Forrest, I got sick before that fight. 2 weeks out of the fight, I caught the flu, and I was laying in bed for 5 days and ended up losing like 11 pounds or something like that. I ended up not really having to cut weight for that fight because by the time I got out of that, and it was right before the fight. So these things can happen, and as a fighter, as an athlete, when you're prepping, you have to make that executive decision, like, do I take this fight in this condition, or do I skip over this fight and say, hey, look, I can't fight. And fighters run into those decisions all the time. So a product like this is something that can really help you.
Well, see, we had Boss on, Boss Rutan last week, and he brought up something like toe burns, mat burns on your knees, on your toes, cracked knuckles, things like this. This could most definitely, like, you wouldn't want to have to slather it all over your body every time, like you said. It's kind of cost prohibitive that way. But as kind of like one line of defense, if you know you have a crack in your skin or mat burns or something like that, wouldn't be a bad idea to go ahead and protect yourself from what might be floating around on dirty mats, right?
Well, that's exactly. It's funny that you say that. And that would have been a good way for me to talk about this. On Wednesday of this week, I was actually doing my strength and conditioning training on the AstroTurf at the gym, and just getting up off the mat, I had scraped my knee, and in scraping my knee, like my knee was bleeding pretty good. And I'm like, I can't believe this. I just scraped this on some AstroTurf. But then I was grappling on the mat in my second session that day, and that's exactly what I did. I'm like, you know what? I don't need to be on a mat where I have this bacteria. So, I rub this stuff on my skin. It's easy for a young fighter. When I was 22, 25 years old, like I was invincible, completely invincible. Like I was more invincible than Superman. I didn't think I'd ever get sick. And then suddenly, when the day comes where you suddenly have, like, you get hit with a staph infection or something like that, and you realize that this stuff is real, man, just having a little something, like a good product like this around where you can just hit your skin with it before you jump on a mat or something, if you have some open cuts or some things on your knuckles, it can really save you. And the Armor Gel, it'll provide a barrier of protection for up to about 4 hours. It'll basically keep the bacteria and yeast and fungus at bay.
Okay, so that sounds like a very interesting product. Fight fans, go over to richfranklin.com and check this stuff out. And if my co-hosts don't have any other questions on that particular product, we're going to hit our first break early, and then we're going to go full on into ONE Championships for the rest of the show. You guys have anything else?
Nope, that sounds good to me, bro.
Let's move it along.
All right, so we're going to take our first break. You have been listening to Stand and Bang MMA Podcast with our special guest, Rich Franklin.
Hi, I'm Andrea KGB Lee, and you're listening to Stand and Bang Radio.
Hey, this is Max Holloway.
This is Charmaine Not So Sweet Tweet.
Hi, this is Kelly McGill, and you're listening to Stand and Bang Radio.
Hey, this is Jansen Medeiros, and you're listening to Stand and Bang Radio.
Hey, fight fans, welcome back to Stand and Bang Radio. I'm here with Fred.
Yo, what's happening, Rick?
And Mark.
Hey, how's everybody doing tonight?
And we are lucky enough to have Rich Ace Franklin with us. Rich, thank you.
Man, I wouldn't call that lucky, but we can go with that word.
Well, it's luckier than if I show up to a party. I mean, quite frankly, there's nothing that anybody's going to ask me. But I do have a lot to ask you. Now, we've already talked about how you ended up over in Singapore, which is a very interesting story. Now, as I've done more watching and more studying on ONE Championships, I have been blown away at the depth and breadth of the company. Could you go ahead and for the fight fans, tell them how long it's been around and just how large of a market you cover and just how large of an organization it actually is?
Okay, so I've been with the company since, I guess, like end of May last year. So I've been there almost a year. They did the first show, I believe the first show was 2012, and we've had 23 or 24 shows at this point. So we still really are a startup company. We had 12 shows last year. We're on target and looking to do 22 shows for this year. And basically in Asia, we broadcast in over 70 countries. We have partnerships with television stations like Fox that broadcast to multiple countries, as well as broadcasting capabilities with local partners in each of the countries that we're in. And basically, with the broadcasting that we do, we have the ability to reach about a billion viewers.
See, now that's what I was talking about when I said depth and breadth. That is amazing, a billion viewers. Like, we talk over here, our reach is always in millions. Now, of course, in Asia, completely different. So with Fox, with Star TV, with the deals that you have in all of the countries, you guys are reaching an enormous audience. And I also noticed that you guys have a huge roster. How have you been able to accumulate so much talent in such a short amount of time?
Well, so Matt Hume works as our the matchmaker for ONE Championship, and he does much of the signing of the fighters. And the product over there, it's different because you guys were talking about the Jose Aldo and like in that fight with basically like it's Ireland versus Brazil in the fight that you were talking about at the top of the show. Every fight that we do in ONE Championship is basically one country versus another country. And so we have to go into each of these countries separately and find the local talent there. And so when you talk numbers, like for example, like the United States is 350-ish million people, but Indonesia alone is 320 million people. And so each market that we go into, it's basically like one piece of the pie. But when we go into a market like Indonesia, we have to go into Indonesia and look for the local Indonesian stars. And when we're in Malaysia, we're trying to find the best fighters in Malaysia. And so systematically, ONE Championship, we have a very like grassroots, hands-on approach to the market over there. We go into each of these countries. We find the local shows that are going on there, whether they be amateur or professional shows, and we say, okay, guys, look, we want to work with you guys. And we use these shows basically to help supply or feed the fighters, feed into our show, which is a larger show. And then on the back end of that, before they even get to the show, like I was talking about before, they'll send somebody like myself or somebody else in the company like Matt, for example, because he was my coach. We'll go in and we'll conduct seminars with the local gyms and that are basically signed on with us. And conduct these seminars for fighter development and things like that. So for ONE Championship, not only are we building the organization itself, but we're also building the complete MMA scene in Asia. Like we are truly educating the fans and educating the fighters and building this from the ground up in a very grassroots effort over there.
That sounds like a very good stepwise progression to build a company, especially with so much potential. Now, Fred, I know you and I talk about all the time about the differences between the American fighters, the European fighters, the guys from Asia. Now, not only does ONE Championships present an organization with different rules, you can kick when an opponent is down, you can knee when an opponent is down. You have this whole entire market, this whole entire country. Now, Fred, you wanted to ask Rich kind of like a temperature question. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as far as the American fighters being over in Asia, like Funky Ben Askren, he is your guys' welterweight champion.
Mm-hmm.
And he likes to talk a little bit. He is, he's got an interesting personality. Most of the Asian fighters don't really get into the smack talk all that much. Is it interesting having been over there, and does that kind of drum up a little bit of interest, seeing as how you guys are just kind of starting the grassroots effort? Is something like that kind of enjoyed by the Asian fans, so to speak?
I think so, a little bit. The Asian fans, it's interesting. If I go back to my own personal experience, the first time I fought in Asia, I fought in Japan. And in Asia, oftentimes in some of these countries, when you're fighting, it's like watching a tennis match on television. If you've ever watched a tennis match, it's very quiet. And then when a player does something great, or when there's a point scored, everybody claps and cheers, and then the clapping stops, and the competition goes back to quiet again. And that's oftentimes in these countries, fights are like that. Like, when you fight in Japan, it's exactly how it was when I fought. It's very, very quiet. The only people you can hear in the entire arena is your corner and your opponent's corner, until there's some technique that's performed that's done very well, and then the arena will erupt in applause, and then they'll immediately go silent again. And that's just how things are culturally there. It's very difficult to get fighters to really trash talk each other and build a fight, because in Asia there's basically a martial art tied to every culture in Asia. And one of the foundational principles of any martial art typically is respect. And so these gentlemen, they have a tremendous amount of respect for each other. And so it's very difficult to get them to say something, whether it be trash or negative or whatever you want to do, something to build a hype that, that Floyd Mayweather type of talk or whatever. It's very difficult to get people to do that. But when you bring somebody like Ben over, and especially Ben Askren, he has a very unique style of trash talking, and he's very short and to the point and matter of factly about the way that he does things. So I think sometimes the Asian fans, they are very, very intrigued by him, but at the same time, it's hard for them to interpret whether he's being disrespectful or maybe just hyping a fight or something like that.
Okay, cool. Do you think that it matters at all? Like you said that you guys are actually trying to build and promote the company too, and the Asian culture is a bit different than our culture in America. Does that spill over into the way you guys are trying to promote the product in Asia as well?
Absolutely. This company is based in Singapore, and it's a company based in Asia, run by Asians for an Asian market. And so they have a really good grasp on understanding how business works in that region. And most of the fights that we basically promo, what we're doing is we're building local heroes over there. Granted, Ben is our 170-pound champion, but we have champions in other categories in the different weight classes that are from various countries over there, and we're basically building these local heroes. But oftentimes when we build a card, like if we're building a card, like we just did our card in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, and between Malaysia and Singapore and Indonesia, there's a rivalry between these nations. So you'll see on the card a lot of Malaysia Indonesian or Malaysia Singaporean matchups on the card, and basically we're bringing to the fans like their local heroes. So it's a different product altogether, especially when you take the rule differences in consideration.
Okay, now that was something that I wanted to bring up. Now, obviously, you didn't have any play in the policy. Now, is it just standard over there in Singapore or in other Asian countries that there is like a more open striking policy? Like, we have a very strict policy here, obviously, in MMA in America. If your opponent is downed, there's no more knees to the head. There's no more kicks to the head. And I know that there's a lot of people who would say maybe, well, Boss Rutan, for instance, get rid of elbows on the ground because they're not used to knock you out, they're used to cut you, and then maybe bring back knees so you could knee an opponent in the north-south position. Is that something that you see throughout all of Asian MMA, or is this something unique to ONE Championships?
Well, I think you see it throughout all of Asian MMA because ONE Championship is the biggest promotion in Asia, and we abide by what is called the global rule set. Now, this is another thing that we do is we do an extensive amount of training with both our referees and our judges on our judging criteria, and of course the referees for the striking criteria to keep the fighters safe. And whether some of the small organizations there, like we're currently looking at creating a system of certification for the global rule set. But in Asia, because martial arts are tied to these cultures, I think that it's not in the States to see somebody, even if you back up and look at how MMA developed in the U.S. here, it was a very like just eye-opening experience to the American population to see somebody get punched, hit the ground, and then to see them get punched again on the ground. That's just not the way the Western mentality works. Because you can watch old Western films here in the U.S. You watch two cowboys duke it out, and when one guy gets punched and dropped, then the other cowboy backs up and kind of goes like, "Come on, get back up, boy. We're going to continue duking it out here." And in all these Asian cultures where these martial arts have their foundation, that's just not the same way that they fight there. So I think that the rule set is more widely accepted in that area of the world.
Okay, fantastic. Mark, I know that you had something that you wanted to ask Rich about ONE.
Yeah, Rich, you've talked a lot about how big the promotion ONE Championship is getting in the Asian market, how you're building the brand, putting out some really great shows and whatnot. It kind of, I guess, sort of, for some of the fans who are watching it a lot, harkens back a little bit to maybe how Pride eventually or initially sort of broke out and became this really masterful and promotion within the sort of the Asian market and whatnot. Do you see sort of ONE Championship having those same ambitions of starting off as a very sort of Asian-centric promotion and then potentially expanding more so out into the West?
Yeah, the long-term goal of the promotion is to grow globally. And for us, like, the sky is the limit. It's not one of those things where we have a ceiling like, well, if we just basically control Asia, then we'll be happy there. Once that we're establishing in Asia, and once we have Asia a set routine, like I said, last year we had 12 shows. This year we're doing 22 shows. Next year in 2016, it's the plan to do 40 plus shows. Ideally, the company would like to be able to do one show, basically a show every Friday night, so that Friday nights become synonymous with ONE Championship fighting. Now, if we're doing shows in South America or North America or Asia or Europe or wherever those shows may be, the company is not tied to one particular region. This just within the last year, we've signed several fighters from Eastern European countries, and so we're looking at possibly going to countries like that at some point in time. And so expansion for us is just whatever makes sense at the time. So yeah, the sky is the limit for this company.
Okay, I have a question kind of to segue off of Mark's. Do you feel that ONE has been so successful at what they're doing because there was more or less a vacuum left by Pride not being part of the market anymore?
I don't know. I don't know if that really made a difference for us. And it would be interesting for you to ask somebody else that's actually based in Asia, that has lived in Asia for the last 10 years, that question. Only because when I see the education process that we have to go through with many of the fans in Asia, it doesn't seem like we have this extensive number of educated fans who have just been left with this void of no mixed martial arts because Pride basically went away. It really does feel like we're starting at square one in building this thing. So, well,
actually, I do have a better question for you then, because we don't have too many Asian fighters on the show because my Mandarin is a little bit rusty. But that does bring up a question that I wanted to ask you. How is the overall temperature? Now, you had said that all of these countries have a mixed martial arts or a martial arts, that is tied to their culture. Now, you've also said that the fans are not very savvy. So what is the overall temperature towards mixed martial arts, and are the fans excited to start to see this cultural thing be incorporated more into a mass media situation?
Yeah, I do. I think, and when we were talking before, I'm not really sure I finished making a point about this, but when I was talking about my personal experience of fighting in Japan and comparing the crowd to something of a crowd at a tennis match, that's kind of a typical Asian culture. But the more shows that we do, the more energy that you see in these venues, like at the arenas and stuff. You can just feel the energy, just like you feel the energy here in the U.S. And you can see, especially like two of our biggest shows, two of our biggest markets are Manila and probably Manila, Kuala Lumpur, and then Singapore are our three biggest markets, because those are the three markets that we've done the most shows in. And repeat shows, and so we're established there. And our fan base is highly established there. But even the show that we did in Taiwan last year, it was the energy that was coming from the crowd. And we did our first show in Beijing this year, and you don't know what to expect the first time you go into a market. This is the first time that an international production, like the ONE Championship, an international production, had come into mainland China and done a show. And we really didn't know what to expect from the crowd. And when we got in there, the main event that evening, we were running really close to the deadline of the TV deal, and the arena being, the arena with basically the lights being shut out and everything. And we had the final fight of that night was one of the most exciting events, one of the most exciting fights that I've ever seen in MMA. And it was part of a 4-man tournament that we did, and it was an amazing finale to that 4-man tournament, and truly exciting. And I mean, literally the fans, nearly every fan in that stadium was on their feet cheering. And for myself, it wasn't something I expected from the Chinese fans. But you can see that the culture, that the fans are becoming more educated about the sport. They understand when they see good technique happening. And more importantly, when the fights are happening, you can really see the fans become energized and excited about things.
Okay, that's fantastic. I know I have one last follow-up question, kind of a lesser question for Rich before we go to the second break. Do you guys have anything else before I ask my one last little question and go to break?
Yeah, I actually do. Quickly, just while we're on ONE Championship, so most fight fans know Ben Askren. Most fight fans are familiar with Shinya Aoki. But since we got Rich on the horn here, and he is you still train and you're on the front line, so to speak, over there, are there any guys we should be on the lookout for? Any guys that are on the come up that are really dangerous that we should kind of keep our eyes for over here?
Man, when I get asked this question all the time, and even in the West here, I get asked this question, and it's very difficult to give an answer to something like that, because there are so many fighters that you watch them fight at a young age, and you see them and you think like, oh man, this kid really has potential, and then suddenly they fall off the wagon. Like, you take a loss or two, they're young, they've experienced a little bit of pride or fame, and suddenly that derails them, and so it's really difficult to tell. I will say that the one thing that we really we have several fighters, but one person that really comes to mind for me is we have a girl that fights for us. Her name's Ann Osman, and she's from Malaysia, and Malaysia it's a Muslim country, and you have to understand that culturally, like, things are different in the countries that we go to and do these shows. But she's a Muslim female, and potentially will be the first female champion that we would have in ONE Championship. But just a very talented girl, and somebody that when she comes to fight, like, she's game, and she brings a good, entertaining fight to the table. She just had her last fight in Kuala Lumpur, the last card that we did, against an Egyptian a girl that's an Egyptian boxer, and it was just a really exciting fight. So that's one person that every time I see her fight, she gets better and better, and impresses me. And we have several fighters on the card that are on our roster that are like that.
Okay, cool. So more or less, just keep our eyes on the organization, because there's a lot of good talent in there.
There's a lot of good talent, and every fight that we've had, like every card that we've put forth, like the matchmaker, like Matt does an amazing job matching these fights. the beautiful thing is that Asian fighters, the one thing that I really respect about Asian fighters is that when they're in the cage, these guys, they don't mind taking risks. You'll see guys that'll take risks on like highly risky moves in positions and some things it'll pay off sometimes. And you see some amazing highlight reel knockouts, like jumping, spinning elbows and just some crazy stuff. Like the fights that ONE Championship put on are truly, truly entertaining fights.
Well, that's definitely what we want to see. I'm going to save my my inconsequential question for after the break. So with that, you have been listening to Stand and Bang MMA podcast. Our guest is Rich Ace Franklin, and we'll be back right after this. Hey, fight fans. Welcome back to Stand and Bang Radio. I'm Aaron Robbins. I'm here with Mark Modeski.
Hey, how y'all doing tonight?
Fred Kirby.
Hey, what's happening, fellas?
And Rich Ace Franklin.
I'm here.
Okay, we learned a lot about ONE FC, ONE Championships in the first segment in Armor Gel. Now, Rich, we'd like to go on and do a little bit more personal stuff with you. When you go over there, now obviously when you come home, it's obvious that you're well recognized. When you go to the other countries there for your grassroots movement, are you recognized over there because of your time spent in the UFC?
Yeah, I am. And it's crazy. Because I'll be walking down the street in a country like Cambodia, for example. We did a show in Cambodia last year, and I'm walking down the street in Cambodia, and I get recognized by a Cambodian who doesn't even really speak English, but I can recognize my name, and it's quite weird to see something like that happen. It's funny to me because you had mentioned earlier that I'm just this kid from this small town outside of Cincinnati here in Ohio, and I always tell people that at one point in my life I taught high school. I was the kind of person that could put my name on a piece of paper and give it to a kid, and he didn't want to take it home. That was called a progress report. And then I went and somehow turned into this guy who would put my name on a piece of paper that kids would be willing to stand in line for. But it does. It happens when I'm in different countries. It happens oftentimes, not only just by Asians, but even when I run into various people like expats and stuff like that, like people working in Asia from all over Europe or Australia or just other countries. So yeah, I do get recognized quite a bit, actually.
That's awesome. That'll show you the power of mixed martial arts. Now, Fred, you and I talked about this. You are from Ohio, and I know you wanted to ask Rich before he has to go. We're running short on time with Rich, but why don't you go ahead and ask him what you wanted to, being a hometown boy over there?
Yeah. Seeing as how I'm from Dayton and you're from Cincinnati, we're both from Ohio. I have the unique opportunity to ask you. I'm just kind of curious. Are you still associated with MMA in Ohio at all? Clearly, you have a lot of fish to fry over in Asia, but do you still keep in contact with any gyms or whatnot here in Ohio?
Oh, absolutely. Actually, I was just up in your neck of the woods tonight. I was up there on 675 having dinner with a friend of mine this evening. And yeah, I am. I'm somewhat vested in a gym. I've worked out at a gym that's located in Middletown, which is midway between Dayton and Cincinnati, called Power Station. And so, Power Station had recently moved its facility, to a new complex, Power Station Extreme Fitness. And of course, I've always trained with George Gurgel, who had competed in the UFC. But I'm still with him and train with just over here in general. My kickboxing coach Neil Rowe runs his school, Sakin, right here out of Westchester, and I go train there. I was actually at his place the other day, and I've been in and out of Power Station a half a dozen times this week. So yeah, I'm still tightly wrapped into the scene here of mixed martial arts here in the States.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, that is fantastic to see you doing so much traveling and then still being able to give back to the local scene of MMA. Mark, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
All right. Before we have to lose Rich here, and I want to make sure that he can mention the latest event coming up for ONE Championships. I know that you had a couple of questions for him, more personal questions than business questions.
Yeah, Rich, I just wanted to ask you, I mean, I have to ask, this is a big fan question that comes in and whatnot. We know you got one fight left on your contract and whatnot. What are your plans for fighting in the future? Are you going to just focus your career on ONE Championship, you think, moving forward, or what's the story?
Yeah, I am focused on my career with ONE Championship. I have a good career here, and I'm part of a great team. I do have that fight left, and honestly, I still train every day, like I'm in fight prep. I train this week, and this week I had, I just got back from Asia, and of course when I was in Asia, oftentimes I get a little caught up with business and my training gets sidetracked, and I'm not doing as much as I would when I'm here in the States. But I'll be here for the next couple of months. And, this week alone, I did a double session on Monday, a double session on, Thursday, a double session on Friday, and I did singles on Wednesday and Saturday. So, I mean, I'm in the gym a ton, and that hunger to compete is still there. So, for me, this stuff is really it's about timing, and it's about it's about my responsibilities for ONE Championship. So we'll see. I am focused on my career, and I do realize that time is dwindling, and that the longer I let that time dwindle, the more improbable it'll be that I'm going to fight. But I still have that fight on my contract, and I do have some desire left in the tank to finish that contract out for sure.
Okay, fantastic. Now we do have these are the two most popular fan questions. This was the other most popular fan question that we got. Rich, you are one of the few guys that have been had a high-profile separation from the UFC while still in some sort of contract, but you have a very good relationship with the UFC. The fans want to know, when are we going to see you in the Hall of Fame?
That's a question for the people who vote on putting me in the Hall of Fame and the fans themselves. I can't determine when I'm going to be in the Hall of Fame.
All right. Well,
you know what? That's even arrogant of me to say. I can't even determine if I'm going to be in the Hall of Fame. So that's for the powers that be. And if the fans out there want to see me inducted in the Hall of Fame, then they need to get on their little message boards and start making it happen for me.
Okay. Well, that must be something that's in their mind, because that was definitely one that wanted to be answered. Now, with the few remaining moments that we have with you, could you please let us know what's coming up next with ONE Championships? What are we going to expect?
Yeah, I just returned from Manila, did the press conference for ONE Championship Valor of Champions. It's April 24th, and it starts. I think the start time, first fight on the main card is 7:30. But the main event that night is Ben Askren and Luis Santos. And that fight actually was a fight that was supposed to happen. They were both at one point in time contracted with Bellator, and they were basically on track to face each other, Ben and Luis. And basically these two, they have some unfinished business going on. So they've had quite a bit to say about him. You know, Ben's the kind of fighter who's not shy about his game plan. He basically says, I'm going to come across the ring, I'm going to take you down, I'm just going to beat the crap out of you until the judge stops it. And the global rule set really plays well to Ben's advantage as a wrestler. He's able to control opponents and use his knees and stuff like that on the ground. But I'll tell you, man, I'm really impressed with Luis, and I like watching him fight. He's very entertaining. That man, when he steps into the cage, is nothing but business. I mean, he's there to fight. And he's well versed. I mean, his judo is solid. He's a black belt in BJJ on the ground, and he knows how to throw some heavy hands. So I think of any of the guys that we can throw at Ben, this is going to be his biggest test yet to date. And I'm really excited to see this card. In the rest of the card, like I said, we put on some great fights. We signed a big talent from the Philippines, a guy by the name of Mark Striegel. He's fighting a solid guy from the States here. His name's Casey Swire. That's going to be a good solid fight, something that's going to be very entertaining. And I'm really excited to see that one as well. But the fights here, obviously, they start on Asian time, but you can catch the fights. You can catch them on onefc.com/livestream, or either live, or you can catch replays. And it's a really good card, like something that, trust me, I'm going to be tuning in to watch these fights for sure.
All right. Well, our time is running short, so we're going to say goodbye to Rich. Rich, thank you very much for being on the show. And if you have anything else ever coming up, we hope that you would return and visit us again.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, no problem. All right, so we lost Rich a little bit earlier, obviously a busy guy. So thank you very much, Rich Franklin, for stopping by for as long as you could. And now, fellas, something interesting happened last night. World Series of Fighting actually put on a good card. Not a great card, but a very solid card, except for their stream, which there's always difficulty with the streams over at World Series of Fighting. And in my opinion, I would have to say, to wrap up the show here, we got another 10 minutes or so I think we're going to try to talk about this here. Now, you guys know that I am a big fan of all of the organizations. Obviously, we just had Rich on, so of course, ONE Championships, but World Series of Fighting, I even like the regionals, RFA, CES, all of those. But there's always kind of this hardcore fan and even the casual fan who don't really matter much because they think that MMA is UFC. Who's the second runner? Obviously now it's Bellator. In my opinion, if World Series of Fighting could keep putting on cards like this, they would be in contention for the second place. And another interesting thing, before we get into the results and the upsets of last night, I want to ask you guys something. Are you a fan, because World Series of Fighting has instated a new thing that we haven't seen in a while? They're doing a light heavyweight tournament. What do you guys think about the tournament situation in organizations?
You know what, Aaron? I mean, I think we talked about this last week when we had Boss Rutan on the show, and I personally am a big fan of the tournament style. I think it's really good to kind of, get people following along the card the whole way and like watching things the whole way along. It's keeps things exciting, helps to build up underdogs and new champions and new exciting stars. So, I mean, those are my favorite back in the day when I think back to the old cards. That's the old UFC cards. That's kind of my take on it. Fred, what do you think?
I'm not in love with it, man. I think Bellator tried the tournament idea, and it just didn't work for them. I think a one-off tournament once in a while to kind of generate some buzz could be fun. But I think if they try to continue doing it or making it like a permanent thing, it wouldn't be that great. Bellator tried their best to force the tournament idea down our throat, and it just seemed like it didn't work at all. So I don't know if I'm in love with the tournament idea, honestly.
Well, Fred, in this situation with World Series, they've got a lot of like vacant titles. So in this case, it's not like there's already a champion determined and we're looking for the number one contender for the light heavyweight tournament. This is actually looking for the inaugural light heavyweight championship. So does that sway your opinion at all?
Yeah, I guess so. Like I said, I mean, maybe a one-off just to kind of crown the champion. That could be cool. But like once we get the champions established, I don't think the tournament format is something that you're going to want to kind of go with long term. I could see why it would work now, but beyond that, it's enough with it.
All right. Well, for the fans who didn't watch World Series of Fighting 19, let me paint the picture here a little bit. We were going to have the semifinals of the light heavyweight tournament, and it was supposed to be Thiago Silva versus Hani Marquez. And Matt Hamill was actually supposed to fight Vinny Magalhaes. Vinny Magalhaes pulled out, and then it was supposed to be Matt Hamill versus Thiago Silva. And then the night of the fight, obviously, Matt Hamill came down with, some people are saying, a sinus infection. What it sounded like on the broadcast is it was actually quite a violent stomach virus. So Matt Hamill was forced to pull out, and on absolutely no warning whatsoever, we find Thiago Silva fighting a general unknown fighter, more or less, in Teddy Holder. Now, did you guys give Teddy any chance in this fight, Mark?
Absolutely not. I mean, Thiago Silva's a beast, and I mean, outside of his issues that he's had in the past with PEDs and whatnot, I mean, the guy's always been violent. And I've always said he's one of the few guys, if I ran into him on the street, like, I'd almost run the other way. He's a terrifying guy, and I was pretty sure he was going to cut right through Holder. Really, yeah, like I say, really impressive and a big win for Holder overall.
Fred, was this a little bit of an eye-opener for you?
I mean, I guess on one hand it could have been, but you know, hindsight's always 20/20. Nobody really knew who Teddy Holder was going into that fight, and everybody knew who Thiago Silva was. So generally, I could see why, you know, everybody's assuming that Thiago was going to steamroll him, but hindsight being what it is, Thiago Silva hasn't looked really great for quite a while now, and he has been going through a ton of personal issues, to say the least. So looking back on it, it might not be surprising that a cat with a 9-1 record, came out and starts him that maybe hasn't had a laundry list of personal problems going on.
Okay, well, for those of you who didn't get to see the fight, it started, I think, as everybody thought it would start. Teddy Holder looked good, big guy. Everybody expected Thiago Silva to be violent, to get rid of this guy pretty quick, and that's the way that it looked like it was going to go. Thiago Silva landed a devastating shot right to the forehead of Teddy Holder. He was rocked, kind of stepping in potholes a little bit. Then, lo and behold, that big guy, puncher's chance, 205-pound guy, bam, hit Thiago Silva, and he was not able to recover. Took him down. Did ground and pound until the referee was forced to step in and stop the fight. Later on, of course, Thiago Silva said he probably could have continued. Of course, all fighters say this. And then right away, because of his personal issues, of course, and we can come right out and say, he assaulted a woman. It's pretty much on record. There was a huge outcry in social media because they kind of tried to do the sympathy card with Thiago Silva, like, oh, sorry, buddy, we know you were supposed to win, and maybe it was because you didn't have time to prepare for Teddy Holder. And right away, everybody was like, no, do not give this guy, any little bit of slack. He's, everybody's very visceral about this whole thing. So now what we see is a virtual unknown Teddy Holder. He will be facing Hani Marquez. And if I'm pretty sure if he beats Hani Marquez, he's going to be fighting for the light heavyweight championship of World Series of Fights. And now this is why I enjoy the tournaments, at least for the inaugural belt, because quite frankly, didn't we just have this in the UFC? You guys can argue with me if you want to, but wasn't Tough 20 a tournament for the strawweight championship? Fred?
Yeah, all things considered, you're right. But that, like I said, that was for a special circumstance for the belt. But yeah.
And Mark, wouldn't you say that? If there's an inaugural championship, what better way to make sure that the top 6 or the top 4 guys compete with each other to make sure that you got the right pick?
Yeah, man, absolutely. I totally agree with everything you said, Aaron, and I think it just reiterates what I had said in the previous point. This is when we really get to see sort of who the new stars are and who shines.
Now, the other huge thing that happened, and huge being a relative term, of course, since we are talking about World Series of Fighting, Justin Gaethje defended his title against Palomino. Now, Justin Gaethje, you go over into social media, he's got like 3,000 followers. He doesn't have his own Wikipedia page. This guy, I don't know if you guys realize this, 7-0 in his amateur career, now 13-0 in his pro career, and every single fight, this guy brings it. He has one gear. He goes forward the whole time. It is hard to hurt him. He is ridiculously strong. He's a great wrestler, and he showed that last night. And this, Boss Rutan went nuts. Rice over there co-hosting with him or co-commentating with him went nuts. The crowd was going nuts. This was one of the best 3-round battles. It was supposed to be 5 rounds, but it didn't go that far. These guys gave her balls from the opening bell right until Gaethje collapsed Palomino with leg kicks. Fred, have you ever seen a Rock'em Sock'em fight like this, or when's the last time you think you saw a Rock'em Sock'em fight like this?
I tell you what, I don't know if I've seen a fight like this in WSOF. This was an amazing fight, man, and Justin Gaethje is one of the more exciting fighters not in the UFC, and probably the most exciting fighter on WSOF's roster. I love leg kicks too, man. Seeing him in the fight the way he did with them leg kicks was phenomenal. I think that leg kicks are one of the funnest ways to watch a fight end, just because I guess you don't see it very often, and when you kick a guy in the leg and actually watch him drop and seeing a fight end in that fashion is always unique and awesome to me. Yeah, I kind of wonder what's going on with Justin Gaethje, though. I wonder how long WSOF will have him locked up for, and how many of these performances it'll take before people start wondering whether he's going to get the call up to the big time.
Well, see, and that was the big question on social media immediately with the financial troubles that World Series of Fighting has. And now, obviously, a guy who's 13-0 starts to beg the question, is he in the wrong organization? Mark, what do you think about fighters like that who just seem to be kind of stuck in a limbo? They might be better than where they're at.
Well, it's a good question, Aaron, because, I mean, you see a lot of this with a lot of different guys in a lot of different promotions we've seen over the years. And, bring up the financial troubles with World Series of Fighting, I think, is a valid point. How long is it before we see the UFC start to get their scouts out? I'm sure they already do, picking out the guys that they want so they can go shopping once the promotion folds and they can buy up the contracts. I feel you got to feel for the guys a little bit, but at the end of the day, man, they're still out there, they're still fighting, they're still making their mark, and you know what? The gods will prevail, man, and fate has a funny way of making things work out. So that's kind of my take on it.
Okay, because in my opinion, over in Bellator, what do we got? We got Liam McGeary. He just signed a long-term contract in Bellator, but I think that he actually could contend in the UFC. And now in World Series of Fighting, we've got standouts Marlon Moraes, who I think could definitely be a legit threat over there, and Justin Gaethje. But just like you said, so time will tell. And unless you guys have anything else that you want to touch on the probably the best World Series of Fighting that there has ever been, I'm going to wrap up the show. You guys got anything else?
No, sir.
Mark?
All good on this front.
All right. So, Fred, where can we find you on social media?
You can follow me at Kirby_MMA or at Gym City Fighting.
And Mark?
At Last Word Mark. Always follow people back.
All right, fantastic. You can find the show at Stand and Bang Radio. The word stand, the letter N, and the words bang radio. And guys, we have our own official Facebook page now. It's no longer MMA Press Row. It is Stand and Bang Podcast. So go on over to Facebook and give us a like on Stand and Bang Podcast. We do giveaways for each 100 likes that we reach. So like the page, and if we pick you, you'll end up with some fighter swag. And make sure to stay tuned next week. We've got good old Smiling Sam Elvey on the show.